The widowed taxi driver's son lived in isolation until a neighbor did something surprising. Mark Johnson was silently crumbling in despair every day as he watched his son grow more distant. The 8-year-old boy had stopped speaking 3 months ago and spent his afternoons sitting alone in the building hallway, waiting for his father to return from work. It was on one of these afternoons that Emily Parker, the new neighbor in apartment 203, decided to do something that would change their lives forever. The young education student came downstairs, carrying a plate of homemade cookies, and approached the quiet boy. "Hi, you're Ethan, right?" she said, sitting on the cold floor beside him. The boy only lifted his dark eyes for a second before staring back at the ground. Emily didn't let it discourage her. "I'm Emily, I live next door. I made these cookies this morning and thought you might like to try one." Ethan shook his head slowly, refusing the offer. Emily set the plate between them and leaned against the wall. "That's okay, they'll be here if you change your mind. You know, I like sitting in the hallway sometimes too. It's a good place to think, isn't it?" The silence stretched for a few minutes. Emily watched the boy discreetly. He wore a faded blue t-shirt and jeans, his dark hair needing a trim, and there was such deep sadness in his eyes that it broke her heart. "Do you want me to tell you a story?" she asked softly. For the first time, Ethan looked directly at her. There was a shy curiosity in his gaze. Emily began telling a story about a boy who lived in a forest and was friends with all the animals. Her voice was sweet and engaging, and little by little Ethan relaxed his tense shoulders. When she did a funny voice to imitate a mischievous monkey, the corner of the boy's mouth twitched slightly. "Ah, I almost got a smile," Emily said, pretending to celebrate. This time Ethan couldn't completely hide the smile that insisted on appearing. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story." The sound of heavy footsteps on the stairs interrupted the moment. Mark Johnson was walking up slowly, his shoulders hunched from exhaustion after another 16-hour day driving a taxi through the streets of New York City. At 32, he looked 50. The loss of his wife Rachel had left deep marks on his face, and the struggle to raise his son alone had only intensified his premature aging. "Ethan," he called, stopping mid-staircase when he saw a stranger sitting beside his son. Emily stood quickly, extending her hand. "Hi, I'm Emily, your new neighbor. I was keeping Ethan company here." Mark eyed the young woman suspiciously. She looked to be in her early 20s with curly hair tied in a high bun and a kind smile. She wore a beige blouse and jeans, nothing flashy, but there was something about the confidence in her tone that unsettled him. "You don't need to worry about him," Mark said curtly. "Ethan, let's go up." The boy stood obediently, but before following his father, he looked at Emily with eyes full of gratitude. "Thanks for the story," he whispered, so quietly only she could hear. Emily's heart clenched. It was the first word she'd heard from the boy. In the days that followed, Emily made a habit of meeting Ethan in the hallway every afternoon. She learned that he left school at 2 in the afternoon, but didn't go home until 4, preferring to stay in the hallway rather than enter the empty apartment. "Why don't you go inside?" she asked one Wednesday, sitting beside him as had become their routine. Ethan absently played with his shoelaces. "It's too quiet in there," he said softly. Emily understood. The silence of the house must have constantly reminded him of his mother's absence. In the hallway there was always some noise, people passing by, life happening. "What if I kept you company inside sometimes?" she suggested. Ethan's eyes lit up, but quickly filled with doubt. "Dad won't like it. How about we ask him first?" But Mark Johnson wasn't willing to accept help from anyone, least of all a stranger. When Emily Parker rang the doorbell on Saturday morning, he answered with a scowl. "Look, miss, I appreciate the interest, but I don't need anyone looking after my son." "It's not about looking after him," Emily explained patiently. "It's just keeping him company. I noticed he's alone for hours and—" "What I do with my life is none of your business," Mark cut in. "Ethan is 8 years old. He's old enough to be alone for a few hours." "Mr. Johnson, I study education at the university. I know children at this age. Don't give me college theories." Mark raised his voice. "I've raised this boy alone until now, and I don't need advice from someone who's never had a child." The door slammed in Emily's face, leaving her standing in the hallway with a heavy heart. On the other side, she could hear Mark speaking sharply to Ethan. "I already told you not to trust strangers. That girl has no business meddling in our lives." "But Dad, she just wanted—" "No discussion, Ethan. I don't want you talking to her again." Emily returned to her apartment with tearful eyes. She had grown up in a loving family in Boston, with parents who were teachers and always encouraged her calling to work with children. She had moved to New York City for college, and seeing Ethan so lonely and sad deeply affected her. But the father's prohibition didn't completely discourage her. In the following days, Emily began greeting Ethan with a wave whenever she saw him in the hallway. The boy would timidly wave back, always looking around to make sure his father wasn't watching. It was on a Thursday that things got complicated. Emily was coming home from college when she found Ethan sitting on the stairs, crying silently. "What happened?" she asked, completely forgetting Mark's warning. "I forgot my key," Ethan sobbed. "Dad's going to be really mad." Emily checked the time. It was 3 in the afternoon. Mark wouldn't be back until 9 at night. "Come on. Let's go to my apartment. You can call your dad from there." Ethan hesitated, remembering his father's words. "He told me not to talk to you." "I know, but this is an emergency. You can't stay in the hallway for 6 hours." Reluctantly, Ethan followed her. Emily's apartment was small but cozy, with plants by the windows and books scattered on the coffee table. It smelled like vanilla and had a warmth that Ethan hadn't felt in a long time. "Do you want to call your dad?" Emily asked, offering the phone. Ethan shook his head. "He's working. He'll get mad if I call." Emily sighed. What kind of father didn't want to be bothered even in an emergency? "All right, then you can stay here with me until he gets back. How about we do your homework together?" For the first time in months, Ethan spent a truly peaceful afternoon. Emily helped him with his math homework, made him a snack and let him draw while she studied. Around 7, he fell asleep on the couch, emotionally exhausted. That's how Mark found him when Emily opened the door at 9:30 that night. "Where's Ethan?" he demanded, agitated. "He's here, sleeping. He forgot his key and—" "You kidnapped my son," Mark exploded. "Of course not. I warned you not to interfere in our lives." Mark shoved Emily aside and stormed into the apartment, finding Ethan rubbing his eyes on the couch. "Ethan, we're leaving now." "Dad, Quiet." Mark grabbed his son's arm tighter than he intended, making the boy whimper in pain. "Hey, you don't need to hurt him," Emily protested. "And you don't need to stick your nose where it doesn't belong. If I see you near my son again, I'll call the police." Mark dragged Ethan outside, leaving Emily stunned at her doorstep. Back in the Johnson apartment, father and son faced each other in tense silence. "Ethan, you disobeyed what I told you." "I forgot my key, Dad. I had nowhere to stay." "You had the hallway." 6 hours, Dad? Was I supposed to sit in the hallway for 6 hours? Ethan's question echoed through the silent apartment. Mark realized he might have overreacted, but his pride wouldn't let him admit it. "Next time, be more careful with your key." Ethan lowered his head, but for the first time, dared to challenge his father. "Emily was nice to me. She helped me with homework and made a tasty snack." "Why don't you like her?" "Because I don't know her. Because I don't know what her intentions are." Mark raised his voice. "Ethan, the world isn't a safe place. There are bad people out there who pretend to be good to trick kids. But she's not bad," Ethan murmured. "How do you know? You're 8 years old, Ethan. You can't tell who's good from who's bad." Ethan stayed quiet, but deep in his eyes was a defiance Mark didn't notice. In the following days, the tension in the building was palpable. Ethan returned to his isolation in the hallway, but now with an even deeper sadness. Emily would pass by him, greeting him softly, and he'd respond with longing glances. A week later, Emily was studying when she heard soft knocks at the door. She opened it to find Ethan standing in the hallway, holding a drawing. "I made this for you," he said quickly, handing her the paper before running off. Emily looked at the drawing with tears in her eyes. It showed her and Ethan sitting in the hallway with a plate of cookies between them. At the bottom, he had carefully written, "Thank you for being my friend." The situation grew more complicated the following Monday when Ethan's teacher, Mrs. Wilson, called Mark in the middle of his shift. "Mr. Johnson, I need to speak with you about Ethan." Mark's stomach tightened. Did he do something? Not exactly, but he's been absent a lot, and when he's here, he stays silent the whole time. The other boys try to play with him, but he isolates himself. I'm worried. Mark checked the taxi's clock. It was 2 in the afternoon. He still had 6 hours of work ahead. "Mrs. Wilson, I have to work. I can't leave now." "Mr. Johnson, Ethan needs attention. I know you lost your wife, and I'm so sorry for that, but your son is crying for help in his own way." "He's fine at home," Mark lied. "Are you sure? Because today he gave me a drawing of himself alone in an empty house, crying." Mark's heart sank. "I can come by tomorrow. That would be important. And maybe you should consider getting professional help for both of you. I know a child psychologist who—" "I don't have money for that," Mark cut in. "There are free services in the public system." "Mrs. Wilson, I have to go. A client is waiting." Mark hung up with trembling hands. He knew he was failing as a father, but he didn't know how to fix it. Working 16 hours a day was the only way he knew to pay the bills and try to forget the pain of loss. Meanwhile, Emily noticed Ethan was even more downcast than usual. On Wednesday, she found him in the hallway holding an open notebook. "What are you drawing?" she asked gently. Ethan showed her the sketch. A boy alone on a bed, tears streaming down his face. "Sometimes I dream about Mom," he said quietly. "And when I wake up, I remember she's not here anymore." Emily Parker's heart broke. She crouched down to Ethan's level. "Do you want to talk about your mother?" Ethan looked around, checking if his father wasn't coming. "She died in the hospital. She'd been sick for a long time, but I didn't know. Dad never talked about it." "What was she like?" Ethan's eyes lit up for the first time in weeks. "She used to sing me to sleep. She knew how to play the guitar, and she made the best chocolate truffles in the world. She sounds like she was a very special person. She was, and she always said I was the bravest boy she knew, but now I don't feel brave." "Why not?" "Because I'm scared Dad might get sick too, and I'm scared of being alone forever." Emily felt the urge to hug the boy, but knew it might cause problems. "Ethan, your father loves you very much. He's just sad too and doesn't know how to show it. He never talks to me. He comes home, heats up some food, watches TV, and goes to sleep. It's like I don't even exist." The revelation hit Emily like a punch to the stomach. She needed to do something, but she knew Mark wouldn't accept her help. That's when she got an idea. On Thursday morning, she called Ethan's school. "Hello, Mrs. Wilson. This is Emily Parker. I'm the Johnsons' neighbor, and I'd like to talk about Ethan." The teacher sighed in relief. "I'm so glad someone cares about that boy. I've been very worried about him." "Me too. I'd like to offer some help. I'm studying education and could assist with homework, give emotional support. His father works a lot and Mr. Johnson is very proud. I've offered help several times and he's refused it all. What if I came as a school volunteer, without mentioning I'm their neighbor?" Mrs. Wilson thought for a moment. "It might work. We have a school support program with college volunteers. You'd have to go through an interview with the coordinators, but with your academic record, I'm willing to do whatever it takes." The following week, Emily went through the interview and was approved as a volunteer for the school support program. Mrs. Wilson assigned her specifically to work with Ethan without mentioning she was his neighbor. When Mark got the call from the school informing him that Ethan had been selected for the free tutoring program, he hesitated. "I don't know, Mrs. Wilson. I don't know this person." "Mr. Johnson, Emily is an excellent education student. She has great references and is doing this voluntarily. Ethan needs this help." Mark thought about the mounting bills, the overdue rent, the nearly empty fridge. There was no way he could afford private tutoring. "All right," he agreed reluctantly. "But I want to meet this person first." On the scheduled day, Emily showed up at school wearing glasses and her hair styled differently. She hoped Mark wouldn't recognize her immediately. "Mr. Johnson?" She greeted him formally when he arrived. "I'm Emily Parker, from the volunteer program." Mark studied her carefully. There was something familiar about her, but he couldn't place it. "You'll be working with my son." "That's right. Twice a week, right here at school, I'll help him with homework and extra practice. And you're not charging anything for this. It's a volunteer program, part of my academic training." Mark was still hesitating when Ethan appeared at the classroom door. "Dad," he called, and when he saw Emily, his eyes widened in surprise. Emily gave him a subtle signal not to give her away. "Hi, Ethan," she said naturally. "I'm Teacher Emily. I'll be helping you with your studies." Ethan understood immediately and nodded, trying to hide the joy in his eyes. "All right, you can start," Mark decided, "but if there's any problem, I'll pull him from the program." After Mark left, Ethan approached Emily with shining eyes. "How did you manage to come to school?" "I signed up to be a volunteer. That way I can help you without your dad getting mad." "You did that for me?" "Of course I did. You matter, Ethan." For the first time in months, Ethan smiled openly. The tutoring sessions became the highlight of his week. Emily discovered he was a very bright child, just discouraged by sadness and isolation. "You're really good at math," she praised him one afternoon. "Did your mom help you with homework?" "Sometimes, but she preferred teaching me music. She said numbers were important, but music fed the soul." "That's beautiful. Would you like to learn to play an instrument?" Ethan lowered his eyes sadly. "Mommy had a guitar, but Daddy put it away in the closet after she left." Emily made a mental note. Maybe this could be a way to connect father and son. "Ethan, do you remember any songs your mom used to sing?" The boy's eyes lit up, and he began humming a sweet melody softly. Emily recognized it as Watercolors by James Taylor. "That's lovely. You have a beautiful voice, you know." Ethan blushed with pleasure. It had been months since he'd received a compliment. Over the following weeks, Emily noticed a significant improvement in Ethan's behavior at school. He started interacting more with classmates, and his grades went up. But at home, things remained difficult. Mark came home later and later, sometimes after 11 at night, and Ethan was already asleep. The two barely spoke. One night, Ethan woke up thirsty and found his father sitting at the kitchen table, head in his hands, with several bills spread out in front of him. "Daddy," he called softly. Mark quickly lifted his head, trying to hide the papers. "Why aren't you asleep?" "I was thirsty." "Are you okay?" Mark forced a smile. "Of course I am." "Go back to bed." But Ethan had seen enough. There were tears in his father's eyes and many red-stamped papers on the table. The next day at school, Ethan was quieter than usual. "What happened?" Emily asked. "I think we're having money trouble. I saw Daddy crying over some bills." Emily felt a pang in her chest. She knew Mark was working too much and still barely making ends meet. "Are you worried?" "I'm scared we might have to leave our home, or that Daddy will get sick from working so much." "Ethan, your father is a strong man, and you'll get through this together." "But he doesn't even talk to me. How can we get through it together?" Emily didn't know how to respond. The distance between father and son was becoming an ever-widening gap. It was then that she decided to take more drastic action. Even at the risk of Mark discovering who she really was, she had to find a way to bring them closer. On Friday, she proposed something different to Ethan. "How about we do a special project? You could make an album about your family with photos and memories. It's a way to celebrate the people we love." Ethan got excited about the idea, but soon deflated. "We don't have many photos. Daddy put everything away after Mommy, after she passed." "Where did he put them?" "In a box in his room. But he doesn't like me touching his things." Emily had a risky idea. "What if you asked him? Explained it's for a school project?" Ethan shook his head. "He'll get mad. He doesn't like talking about Mommy." Emily realized Mark was trying to protect both himself and his son from the pain of remembrance, but in truth, he was only causing more pain. That weekend, Emily watched the comings and goings in the building. She saw Mark leave for work on Saturday morning and decided to try a different approach. She rang the doorbell of the Johnsons' apartment. Ethan answered the intercom. "Ethan, it's me, Emily. Is your father home?" "No, he went to work." "Can I come up? I brought some extra activities for you. Ethan hesitated just a second before opening the door. He missed the afternoons they'd spent together in Emily's apartment. My dad told me not to let anyone in, he said when Emily reached the floor. I know, but I'm your school teacher, remember? And I brought important activities. Ethan let her in, and Emily was shocked by the state of the apartment. It was messy, there was little food in the fridge, and a pile of dirty laundry sat in one corner of the living room. Ethan, you all need some help here at home. Dad doesn't like when I tidy things up, says I might break something important. Emily sighed. Mark was so overwhelmed he couldn't even keep the house in order. What if I taught you how to organize some things? That way you can help your dad. Ethan liked the idea. They spent the afternoon organizing the apartment, washing dishes, and folding clothes. Emily took the opportunity to prepare some meals and leave them in the fridge. Now your dad will have ready-made food when he gets home, she explained. You're really nice, Emily. I wish you were my mom. The words hit Emily like an arrow. She knelt down to Ethan's level. Ethan, I know you miss your mom. And I know you sometimes feel lonely. But your dad loves you very much, even if he doesn't know how to show it. How do you know? Because he works so hard to take care of you. That's his way of showing love. Ethan thought about this, but I'd rather he worked less and spent more time with me. Have you ever told him that? No, he always seems so tired. I don't want to give him more problems. Emily realized father and son were trapped in a vicious cycle. Mark worked too much because he thought that's what a good father should do, and Ethan withdrew because he didn't want to be a burden. Neither knew how to break the pattern. Ethan, how about we talk to your dad about this? The boy looked terrified. No, he'll be mad if he knows you came here. Then let's do something different. How about we write him a letter? Ethan liked the idea, and they spent the next hour writing a letter where Ethan expressed his feelings about his father's absence and his longing for family time. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. When Mark came home that night, he was surprised to find the apartment clean and the fridge stocked with food. Ethan was at the kitchen table pretending to do homework. Who cleaned the house? Mark asked suspiciously. I did, Ethan lied. I wanted to help you. Mark was touched, but also worried. Ethan, you don't need to do this. It's my responsibility to take care of the house. But I want to help, Dad. I want you to feel good when you come home. For the first time in months, Mark sat at the table beside his son. You did a good job, he admitted. Thank you. Ethan seized the moment of closeness to hand over the letter. Dad, I wrote something for you. Will you read it? Mark took the letter curiously and began reading. Dad, I know you work hard to take care of me and I'm grateful for that. But sometimes I feel very lonely. I miss when you'd come home earlier and we'd watch cartoons together. I miss when Mum was here and we were a real family. I know you miss her too. I see you looking sad sometimes. Couldn't we talk about it? I love you so much, Dad. Your son, Ethan. Mark finished reading with tears in his eyes. He hadn't realized Ethan noticed so much about his feelings. Ethan, he began, but didn't know what to say. Dad, do you think you could work a little less? Then we could spend more time together. Mark sighed heavily. Son, I need to work to pay the bills. Life is very expensive, and ever since your mother, ever since it's just been the two of us, everything's gotten harder. But we don't need much money to be together. We could just talk or watch TV, or you could teach me to play Mom's guitar. Mark froze at the mention of the guitar. Ethan, I don't know how to play guitar. But Mom said you did. She said you were the one who taught her. Mark fell silent for a long moment. It was true, in the early years of their marriage, he used to play guitar for Rachel. But after she got sick, he put the instrument away and never played again. That was a long time ago, Ethan. I've forgotten how. Could you try to remember? Mark looked at his son and saw a hopeful glimmer in his eyes that he hadn't seen in months. Maybe we can try tomorrow. Ethan smiled openly for the first time since his conversation with Emily. On Sunday, Mark actually took the guitar out of the closet. It was dusty and slightly out of tune, but it still worked. Ethan sat beside his father on the couch, watching every move with fascination. "The first thing you need to learn are the basic chords," Mark explained, positioning his fingers on the fretboard. When he played the first chord, Ethan clapped with joy. "You remember, Dad. You can play." Mark smiled, feeling an emotion he had long buried. He played a few notes of Rachel's favorite song, Watercolors. "Mom loved this song," Ethan said softly. "It's true. It was the first song she learned to play. Can you teach me?" Mark hesitated. Teaching Ethan to play guitar would mean talking about Rachel, reviving memories he had tried to bury. "Ethan, maybe you'd be better off learning from a real teacher." "But I want to learn from you, Dad." Mark saw the disappointment in his son's eyes and immediately regretted his answer. "All right, we'll try, but I'll have to cut back on work hours a little to have time to teach you." "Really?" Ethan threw himself into his father's arms. "Thank you, Dad." It was the first genuine hug they'd shared since Rachel's funeral. In the weeks that followed, the Johnson family dynamic began to slowly change. Mark reduced his work hours to 12 a day, which meant less money but more time with Ethan. The guitar lessons became a sacred moment between them. Ethan proved to be a dedicated and talented student, absorbing every lesson with enthusiasm. "You have a gift for music," Mark praised him one afternoon, "just like your mother. Do you think she'd be proud of me?" Mark stopped playing and looked at his son. "Ethan, your mother was and always will be proud of you. She loved you more than anything in the world. Sometimes I feel like she's here watching us play." "Maybe she is," Mark said softly. "Maybe she's happy seeing us learn to be a family again." At school, Emily noticed the dramatic change in Ethan. He arrived smiling more, participated in activities, and even made a few friends. "You're different," she remarked during a tutoring session. "Did something good happen at home?" Ethan excitedly told her about the guitar lessons with his father. "And guess what? My dad said maybe next month we can go to the park on Sunday. It's been so long since we've gone out together." Emily was moved to see the boys' transformation, but also worried. Mark's reduced work hours must be affecting their income. A week later, her concern was confirmed. Ethan came to school quieter than usual. "What happened?" asked Emily. "I think my dad is having problems again. Yesterday he said he might have to start working longer hours." "Did he say why?" "He said the bills are hard to pay and that we might have to move to a smaller apartment." Emily's heart tightened. Just when father and son were reconnecting, financial troubles threatened to pull the family apart again. "Ethan, did this make you sad?" "Very. I like our apartment. And if we move, I might have to change schools too." The thought of losing Ethan left Emily desperate. But more than that, seeing the family unravel over money problems motivated her to make a radical decision. That night, she called her parents in Boston. "Sweetheart, what a surprise," said her mother, Mrs. Anderson. "How are your studies?" "Mom, I need your help with a delicate situation." Emily told them the whole story about Ethan and Mark, leaving out only the fact that she'd fallen for that little family. "And what do you want us to do?" asked her father, Professor Anderson. "Do you know any way to help this family without them knowing they're being helped? They're very proud." Her parents were moved by the story and offered to help financially for a few months until things stabilized. "But how will we do it without raising suspicions?" asked Mrs. Anderson. Emily had an idea. "Mom, do you remember the Guardian Angel program you organized at the church in Boston? Of course, we helped needy families anonymously. Could we set up something like that here in New York City with the help of the local church's priest?" The idea was brilliant. Emily spoke with Father Michael from St. Francis Church, who was touched by the Johnson family's story. "It's a noble cause, my child," he said. "I can organize a spiritual adoption campaign among the parishioners. Some families might contribute monthly to help the Johnsons without them knowing who the donors are." "Perfect. And we can say they were chosen through the school." The plan was put into action the following week. Mrs. Wilson called Mark saying Ethan had been selected for a financial aid scholarship offered by a group of anonymous business people who helped families of dedicated students. "But I never applied for any scholarship," said Mark suspiciously. "The program identifies students who excel despite hardships. Ethan was chosen for his effort and improved grades." "How much is the scholarship?" $500 a month for 6 months, direct deposit into your account." Mark fell silent. $500 was exactly what he needed to balance the budget without having to go back to working 16-hour days. "And what do I have to do in return?" "Nothing. It's just encouragement for you to keep investing in Ethan's education." "Is this for real?" "Completely real, Mr. Johnson. We've helped many families this way." Mark accepted the scholarship with tears of relief in his eyes. That night, he hugged Ethan tighter than usual. "Dad, are you okay?" asked the boy. "I am, son. I'm really good. And you know what this means. We'll keep up with the guitar lessons. And on Sunday, we'll go to the park, just like I promised." Ethan jumped for joy. He had no idea his teacher, Emily, had moved heaven and earth to keep the family together. The following month was the happiest Ethan had known since losing his mother. Mark balanced work and family, guitar lessons became a tradition, and they really started going to the park on Sundays. But the happiness was interrupted by an unexpected discovery. On a Thursday, Mark decided to pick Ethan up from school early for a surprise. He wanted to take him for ice cream and maybe buy new guitar strings. When he entered the room where the tutoring sessions were held, he was shocked to see who the teacher, Emily, really was. "You!" he exclaimed, making Emily and Ethan turn around in alarm. "Mr. Johnson," Emily began, trying to explain. "You're the neighbor, the woman I told to stay away from my son." Ethan looked confused between his father and Emily. "Dad, Emily is my teacher at school." "She lied to us, Ethan. She's our neighbor, the same person I told to stay away from you." Emily stood up, trying to stay calm. "Mark, I can explain." "I don't want to hear it. You took advantage of the situation to deceive me and my son." Mark was beside himself. "Ethan, grab your things, we're leaving." "But Dad..." "Now, Ethan." Emily tried one last time. "Mark, please, let me explain. I just wanted to help." "Help? You invaded our lives, lied about who you were, manipulated the situation." Mark stopped and a look of horror crossed his face. "The financial aid, it was you, wasn't it?" Emily's silence was answer enough. "My God." Mark ran his hands through his hair. "You set this all up. The scholarship, the volunteer program, it was all a lie." "Mark, it wasn't a lie. The scholarship exists, the program exists, You just manipulated everything to force your way into our lives," Mark exploded. "Ethan, we're leaving now." Ethan started crying, confused and scared by the argument. "Dad, please don't yell at Emily. She just wanted to help me." "Ethan, she lied to us. Everything she did was based on lies." Mark grabbed his son's arm and stormed out of the school, leaving Emily in tears in the empty classroom. Back at the apartment, the argument continued. "Dad, I don't understand," Ethan sobbed. "Why are you mad at Emily? She's nice." "Ethan, she deceived us. She pretended to be a teacher when she was really the neighbor I told you not to talk to." "But why did you tell me not to talk to her?" Mark realized he didn't have a reasonable answer. Because she's a stranger. We don't know her intentions." "Her intentions are good, Dad. She helped me with homework, listened when I was sad, taught me cool things, and lied about who she was." Ethan fell silent for a moment, thinking. "Dad, do you think if she'd told the truth, you would have let her help me?" The question caught Mark off guard. The answer was obvious. No, he wouldn't have. "Ethan, that doesn't matter. What matters is she lied." "But if she lied to help me, isn't that a good lie?" Mark didn't know how to respond. Ethan's simple logic exposed the contradiction in his own stance. That night, Mark called the school and withdrew Ethan from the volunteer program. He also learned about the financial aid and, out of pride, refused it. Mrs. Wilson tried to dissuade him. "Mr. Johnson, Emily may have acted questionably, but her intentions were genuine, and Ethan was benefiting so much from the program." "I want nothing from her," Mark replied coldly. "And the scholarship? It's not from Emily, it's from a group of businessmen. That she organized, I'm sure. I don't take handouts." Without the scholarship, Mark had to go back to working 16-hour days, Guitar lessons were cancelled, Sunday outings stopped, and Ethan returned to his isolation in the hallway. Emily was devastated. She tried talking to Mark several times, but he ignored her completely. Ethan would look at her sadly when they passed in the hall, but didn't dare disobey his father. Things got worse when, 2 weeks later, Mark received an eviction notice. Without the scholarship, he'd fallen behind on rent. "Dad, are we really going to have to leave?" Ethan asked, seeing tears in his father's eyes. "Maybe, son. Maybe we'll have to live somewhere smaller for a while." Ethan was devastated. Not only would he lose Emily for good, but he'd also have to leave school, the few friends he'd made and the life he'd just begun rebuilding. That night he made a brave decision. He waited until his father fell asleep and slipped out of the apartment, going down to Emily's door. He rang the bell softly. Emily answered in her pajamas, her eyes red from crying. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" "Emily, I need to talk to you." She quickly let him in, worried. "Does your dad know you're here?" "No, he's asleep." "Emily, he's really sad." "Ethan, no, let me speak," the boy interrupted. "My dad's upset because he thinks you lied to him. But I know you lied to help me, and I know you really care about us." Emily knelt to his level, her eyes brimming with tears. "Ethan, I should have told the truth from the beginning. Your dad has every right to be angry with me." "No, he doesn't. He's scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared of liking you. Because if he likes you and you leave, he'll be sad like he was when Mom left." The insight of the 8-year-old left Emily speechless. "Ethan, how do you know that?" "Because I was scared too. When you started being nice to me, I thought, what if she gets tired of me and leaves? But then I realized it's worth the risk because being alone hurts more than being afraid." Emily hugged Ethan, crying. "You're a very wise boy, Ethan." "Emily, can you try talking to my dad one more time? Tell him the whole truth." "Ethan, he won't listen to me. Tell him we might have to move, that he's sad, that I miss my guitar lessons. Tell him you just wanted to help us be a family again." Emily hesitated. She knew Mark might be even angrier if he found out Ethan had disobeyed and come to her apartment. "Ethan, if I try talking to your dad and he gets even madder, promise you won't blame me." "I promise. You're the bravest person I know, Emily. Just like Mom was." The comparison struck deep in Emily's heart. She decided to try one last time. The next day, she waited for Mark to return from work and approached him in the hallway. "Mark, please, just give me 5 minutes to explain." "We have nothing to talk about," he said, trying to walk past her. "We do. It's about Ethan and you, and what really happened." Something in Emily's tone made Mark stop. "5 minutes," he said coldly. Emily took a deep breath. "Mark, it's true I lied about who I was when I introduced myself as a school volunteer. But everything I did was out of love. Love for Ethan, who was suffering alone in the hallway, and love for you, who was working yourself to death trying to be a good father. You don't know me well enough to talk about love. I do know you. I know a man who lost his wife and became afraid to love again. A man who works 16 hours a day, not just to pay the bills, but so he doesn't have time to feel the pain. A man who put his wife's guitar in the closet because playing it brought back too many memories." Mark fell silent, surprised by how accurate her words were. "You had no right to interfere in our lives," he said quietly. "You're right. I didn't. But Ethan was crying for help, and you were so lost in your own grief that you couldn't see it. I was taking care of my son. By working 16-hour days, leaving him alone in the hallway for hours, that's not taking care of him, Mark. That's hiding." Emily's words hit Mark like a slap. "And you thought you had the right to decide what was best for us? No. I just thought I had a duty to help a child who was hurting and a man who was drowning in pride and sorrow." Mark was quiet for a long moment. "The financial aid scholarship, how did you arrange that?" Emily told him about her parents, about the church, about the group of people who had come together to help. "So it wasn't just you, there are other people involved?" "Yes, people who were moved by your story and wanted to help. But you refused out of pride, and now Ethan is the one paying the price." "What do you mean?" "He told me you'll have to move, that you'll have to work even more, that the guitar lessons are over." Mark lowered his head, ashamed. "It's my responsibility to take care of him." And who said accepting help means failing to care? Mark, raising a child alone is one of the hardest things in the world. There's nothing wrong with accepting support. But I don't know you. How do I know you don't have other intentions? Emily took a deep breath before making the hardest revelation. Because I fell in love with both of you. With Ethan, who's an incredible, brave little boy, and with you, a good man doing his best in an impossible situation. Mark stared at her, surprised. What? It's true. I fell in love with your family, with the moments when Ethan smiled as I told stories, with how he spoke about you so fondly even while missing you, with your determination to care for him even when you were broken inside. Emily, I'm not asking for anything, Mark. I'm not asking to be part of your lives. I'm just asking you to let go of pride and accept the help you need. For Ethan. Mark fell silent, absorbing everything he'd heard. And if I accept the help, will you keep interfering in our lives? Only if you want me to. If not, I'll just be the neighbor you greet politely in the hallway. What do you get out of this? The certainty that Ethan won't grow up feeling abandoned and that you won't work yourself to death trying to prove you don't need anyone. Mark was thoughtful for a long moment. Emily, you have to understand something. Since Rachel died, I've been afraid to let anyone in, afraid Ethan would get attached. Because if that person leaves, you'll both hurt again. I understand that fear, Mark. But if you live afraid of pain, you might as well not live at all. The words echoed in Mark's mind. That was exactly what he was doing, not living for fear of suffering. You really fell in love with us? Emily blushed but held his gaze. I did. With Ethan, who taught me love means caring even when it's hard. And with you, who showed me being a father is so much more than providing food and shelter. But you're so young. You have your whole life ahead of you. Why would you want to complicate things with a widower and a child? Because you made me understand what real family is. It's not about blood, Mark. It's about choosing to stay even when it's hard. Mark felt his eyes fill with tears. I don't know how to do this, Emily. I don't know how to let someone into our lives again. You don't have to know, we'll learn together, slowly, one day at a time. Mark was silent, wrestling with himself. If I accept the scholarship, do you promise not to push, to let things happen naturally? I promise. And do you promise not to lie anymore? That if there's ever a problem, any doubt, you'll talk to me? I promise. Mark sighed deeply. All right, I'll accept the scholarship, but for Ethan, not for me. Emily smiled through her tears. It's a start. That night, Mark had an honest talk with Ethan. Son, I spoke with Emily today. Ethan perked up. You did. You didn't fight. We didn't fight. In fact, she helped me understand some things. What things? That I was so afraid of you getting hurt, I ended up hurting you in another way. And that accepting help doesn't make me a worse father. Ethan hugged his dad. Dad, you're the best dad in the world, even when you're confused. Mark laughed for the first time in weeks. Ethan, what do you think about us accepting the scholarship again? And maybe letting Emily be our friend? Really? Ethan's eyes lit up. You'll let her be our friend? I will. But slowly, okay? We'll get to know her little by little. And the guitar lessons? They'll come back. I promise. Ethan jumped for joy and hugged his dad tightly. The next day, Mark called the school to reactivate the financial aid. Mrs. Wilson was relieved. Mr. Johnson, I'm so glad you changed your mind. What about the volunteer program? I want that back too, if Emily still wants to be part of it. I'm sure she will. When Emily found out Mark had accepted the scholarship and asked her to return to the volunteer program, she cried with relief. The reconnection was slow and careful. Emily went back to tutoring Ethan at school, but now Mark knew exactly who she was. Sometimes he'd show up early to pick him up and chat with Emily for a few minutes about the boy's progress. He's doing much better, Mark remarked one Thursday. His grades are up and he seems happier. He's a special kid, Mark. He just needed to feel heard. And how are your college studies going? Good. I'm in my last year of education. Next year I'll start teaching for real. You'll be a great teacher." The compliment made Emily blush with pleasure. Their conversations became more frequent and natural. Mark started arriving a little earlier to pick up Ethan just to have a chance to talk with Emily. "Emily," he said one afternoon, how about you come over for dinner on Saturday? Ethan wants to show you what he's learned on the guitar." The invitation was a turning point. Emily accepted with her heart racing. The dinner was simple: pasta with tomato sauce that Mark insisted on making himself, a salad Emily brought from home, and a pudding Ethan helped make. "You're the first person we've invited to dinner since Mom left," Ethan said casually. Mark was moved by his son's remark. "Your mom would have liked Emily," he said, surprising himself. "I think she sent Emily to take care of us," Ethan said with the innocent wisdom of children. After dinner, Ethan played watercolors on the guitar, with Mark joining in. Emily listened, moved, watching father and son connected by music and the memory of Rachel. "Do you want to try playing too?" Ethan asked, offering the guitar to Emily. "I don't know how," she laughed. "I'll teach you," Ethan said. "And Dad can help too." It was the first activity the three of them did together, marking the beginning of a new family dynamic. In the weeks that followed, Emily started visiting the Johnson apartment regularly, not as an intruder but as a welcome guest. She helped Ethan with homework, cooked with Mark on weekends, and little by little became an essential part of their family routine. One night, after Ethan went to bed, Mark and Emily stayed talking in the living room. "Emily, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you care so much about us? In the beginning, before you really knew us?" Emily thought about her answer. "Because I saw in Ethan the child I once was. My parents split when I was 7, and for a while I felt so alone. If it hadn't been for my grandma who took me in and showed me love, I don't know how I would have gotten through it." "You wanted to be for Ethan what your grandma was for you." "Exactly. And as I got to know you both better, I realized you needed someone too. Not to replace Rachel, but to remind you that life is still worth living." Mark was emotional. "Emily, I think I'm falling in love with you." "Are you sure? Isn't it just gratitude?" "I'm sure. You reminded me of who I was before I got lost in grief, and you showed me it's possible to love again without betraying the memory of those we've lost." Emily moved closer to him on the couch. "I love you too, Mark, and I love Ethan. You've become my family." They kissed for the first time, a sweet kiss full of promises for the future. From his room, Ethan heard the murmur of voices in the living room and smiled. He knew his family was becoming whole again, in a different way but just as special. The following year brought many changes for the family. Emily graduated with a degree in education and got a job at a nearby school. Mark found a better balance between work and personal life, even managing to take short vacations to travel with Ethan and Emily to Boston, where she introduced them to her parents. "So you're the famous Ethan," Mrs. Anderson said, hugging the boy. "Emily talks about you all the time. And you must be Mark," Professor Anderson greeted him. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person." Mark was surprised to learn that Emily's parents were behind the financial aid scholarship. "You did this for us without even knowing us?" "We did it out of love for our daughter," Mrs. Anderson explained, "and because every child deserves a chance to be happy." The trip sealed the family's bond for good. Ethan gained new grandparents, Mark found mentors and friends, and Emily saw her worlds connect harmoniously. Back in New York City, life settled into a peaceful rhythm of happiness. Ethan became an excellent student and a promising guitarist. Mark cut his work hours to 8 a day and reserved afternoons for family time. Emily found her calling teaching children in vulnerable situations. One Sunday afternoon, nearly 2 years after their first meeting in the hallway, Emily made a special announcement. "I have some news to share." Mark and Ethan stopped playing guitar and looked at her expectantly. "I've been offered a position as the academic coordinator at a new school. It's a great professional opportunity." "That's awesome," Ethan cheered. "You're going to be the boss." Mark smiled proudly. "You deserve it, Emily. You're an amazing professional." "Thank you. But there's one issue. The school is in Washington, D.C. I'd have to move." Mark's smile faded and Ethan turned pale. You're leaving?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. Emily knelt to his level. "Ethan, that depends on you. If you both agree to come with me, we'll move together. If not, I'll turn it down and stay here." "You do that? Give up the opportunity for us?" Mark asked. "I would, because you're my family. And family doesn't abandon family." Mark was moved by her words. "Emily, are you sure you want to take us along? It's a big change." "I'm absolutely sure. You're my home no matter where we live." Ethan threw his arms around Emily. "I'll go wherever you go, Emily. You're pretty much my mom now." The boy's words touched all three deeply. Mark stepped closer and hugged Emily and Ethan together. "Then it's decided. The Johnson Parker family is moving to Washington, D.C. "Johnson Parker?" Emily laughed. "Oh, I forgot to mention," Mark said, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Emily Parker, will you marry me?" Emily was speechless, staring at the simple but beautiful ring in the box. "Mark, are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Do you want to officially be part of our family?" "Yes," Emily cried, throwing her arms around him. Ethan clapped and began playing Watercolors on the guitar to celebrate. "Now we'll be a real family," he cheered. "Dad, Mom, and son." Mark and Emily looked at each other, overwhelmed. They had found a love built on friendship, understanding, and mutual care. A love that respected the past, but looked to the future with hope. The wedding took place 3 months later, in a simple ceremony at St. Francis Church, attended by Emily's parents, some school friends, and the new neighbors who had become chosen family. Father Michael, who had helped organize support for the Johnson family, officiated the ceremony with special joy. "Mark, do you take Emily to be your wife, to love and cherish her in joy and in sorrow?" "I do, with all my heart." "Emily, do you take Mark to be your husband, and Ethan to be your son in heart?" "I do, and I promise to care for this family with all the love I have." Ethan stood beside them as the ring bearer, holding the rings and smiling radiantly. When the priest declared them husband and wife, Ethan shouted, "Now I have a mom and dad again." The declaration brought tears to everyone present. The move to Washington, D.C. marked a new chapter for the family. Emily enthusiastically took on her role at the new school. Mark found work at a taxi cooperative with more flexible hours, and Ethan quickly adjusted to the new city and school. "I like it here," Ethan said one afternoon after returning from school. "The kids are nice and the teacher is almost as good as Emily." "Almost?" Emily teased, pretending to be offended. "No one's better than my mom," Ethan replied, hugging her. The term "my mom" now came naturally, without force or comparison to Rachel. Emily had found her place in the family, not by trying to fill the space of someone who was gone, but by creating a new space, equally important and special. 2 years later, on a Saturday afternoon, the family received an unexpected visit. Mrs. Wilson, Ethan's former teacher, was in Washington, D.C. for an education conference and made sure to stop by. "My goodness, how you've all changed," she exclaimed, seeing Ethan, now 12, playing guitar in the backyard of their new home. "Mrs. Wilson," Ethan stood up to hug her. "I missed you. I missed you too, young man, and you playing guitar. Your mother Rachel would be so proud." "Both my mums are proud," Ethan corrected naturally. "Rachel, who's in heaven, and Emily, who's here with me." Mrs. Wilson was moved by the boy's emotional maturity. "And how are your studies?" "Ethan's doing wonderfully," Emily answered, bringing over coffee. "He's one of the top students in his class. And he wants to be a music teacher when he grows up." "How wonderful," Mrs. Wilson cheered. "And what about you, Mark and Emily? How are you?" "We're happy," Mark replied, appearing with a baby in his arms, "and growing. This is Lily, our daughter." Mrs. Wilson's eyes widened. "You had a baby?" "6 months ago," Emily confirmed, beaming. "Ethan was desperate for a little sister." "And now I teach her music too," Ethan said, making funny faces at the baby, who giggled. Mrs. Wilson looked at the complete family and was moved, remembering the sad, isolated boy she'd met years ago. "You've built a beautiful family," she said, It's amazing how love can transform everything. Love and the courage to accept help, Mark added, gazing affectionately at Emily. And the courage to start over, Emily finished. That night, after Mrs. Wilson left and the children were asleep, Mark and Emily stayed on the porch talking. "Do you regret anything?" Mark asked. "Lying at first sometimes, but not the outcome. I regret being so stubborn and proud. I almost lost you because of that." "But you didn't." And Ethan learned an important lesson, that people can change, grow, and forgive. True, he's becoming an incredible young man. "Just like his father," Emily said, kissing Mark softly. "And like his mother. Both his mothers." Emily smiled. He had learned that love isn't a pie that shrinks when divided, but a bonfire that grows the more wood you add. Rachel would always be part of that family, not as a shadow of the past, but as part of the foundation upon which they built the future. Years passed. Ethan became a music teacher, as he had dreamed. Lily grew up surrounded by music and love, playing guitar almost as well as her brother. Mark became supervisor of the taxi cooperative, and Emily became principal of the school where she worked. In their home in Washington, D.C., there were 2 photos in the living room, one of Rachel smiling and another of their current family. The 2 coexisted harmoniously, representing the different phases of love in Mark and Ethan's lives. On a special afternoon when Ethan turned 25, the family gathered to celebrate. Now an adult, graduated, and dating a co-worker, Ethan gave an emotional speech. "Dad, Emily, Lily, I want to thank you for teaching me that family is so much more than blood. It's choice, it's care, it's being there in hard times and celebrating joys together." He turned to Emily. "Emily, you came into my life when I needed it most, and you didn't just save me. You saved my dad too. You showed us it was possible to be happy again." "Ethan," Emily was crying. "No, let me finish. You never tried to erase the memory of my mother, Rachel. Instead, you helped me honor her by being happy. And you gave me an amazing little sister who's the joy of our family." He turned to Mark. "Dad, thank you for having the courage to love again. I know it was hard, but you proved it's possible to honor the past and build a new future." Finally, he looked at Lily, now 10 years old. "And Lily, thank you for coming to complete our family once and for all. You were born into a nest of love that was built with so much care. The whole family was crying when Ethan finished. Today, I understand I don't have a sad story of loss. I have a beautiful story of rebuilding. And it all started when a brave neighbor decided to offer cookies to a lonely boy in the hallway." Emily laughed through her tears, remembering that first day when she approached Ethan with a plate of homemade cookies. "They were the best cookies I ever made," she said. "Because they were made with love," Ethan added, "and love is what makes a real family." The celebration lasted late into the night, with music, stories, and lots of affection. When everyone went to sleep, Mark and Emily stayed on the porch as they often did. "Emily, thank you," Mark said. "For what?" "For being stubborn, for not giving up when I was rude to you, for fighting for our family, when even I didn't know that was what I wanted. Thank you for putting pride aside and giving me a chance. We made a good team, didn't we? The best team in the world." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars and thinking about the long journey since that afternoon in the hallway of their building in New York City. "Mark, do you think Rachel would approve of our family?" Mark thought for a moment. "I think she'd be happy knowing Ethan grew up surrounded by love, and that I learned to be happy again. Rachel always wanted the best for us. I like to think she blessed us somehow, as if she sent you and Ethan into my life. Or sent you into ours. Either way. What matters is where we ended up." Emily nestled into Mark's arm. "I love our story. It's imperfect, started with lies and misunderstandings, but it became the truest thing in my life. And it's still being written. We have Lily growing up, Ethan building his own family. Our story continues." "That's true, and I can't wait for the next chapters." They stayed embraced on the balcony until late. 2 hearts that learned love is a force of rebuilding, capable of turning pain into hope and loneliness into family. The end of the story. So, what did you think of this story of resilience and family love? Tell us which moment moved you the most, and if you know someone who had to rebuild their life just like Mark and Ethan, leave your comment, and if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.